I'm Ashley Thompson.
And I'm Dan.
This is VOA News. I'm Joe Ramsey. Pope Francis said Wednesday that Benedict, who in 2013 became the first pontiff to resign in 6 centuries, is quote-unquote very ill and urged people to pray for him. The head of the worldwide Catholic Church later paid a visit to his 95-year-old predecessor at his home in a former convent inside the Vatican. Francis said, quote, "Remember him because he is very ill, asking the Lord to console and support him." A Vatican source told AFP that Benedict's health began deteriorating about 3 days ago. Chinese hospitals and funeral homes were under intense pressure on Wednesday as a surging COVID-19 wave drains resources, while the scale of the outbreak and doubts over official data prompts some countries to consider new travel rules on Chinese visitors. Reuters correspondent Ed Barron reports.
In an abrupt change of policy, China this month began dismantling the world's strictest COVID regime of lockdowns and extensive testing, putting its battered economy on course for a complete reopening next year. Some international health experts say this means COVID is spreading largely unchecked and could be infecting millions of people a day. China's foreign ministry on Wednesday said there should be a scientific basis for implementing COVID-19 rules after the US government announced it may impose new measures for travelers from China. US officials made the announcement on Tuesday over concerns over a, quote, lack of transparent data coming from Beijing.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky on Wednesday presented his annual address to Parliament before the new year.
Slava Ukraini! Майже ніхто, окрім нас.
Members of Parliament greeted him with a standing applause. There's still no prospects of talks to end the war. This is VOA News. Ethiopian Airlines is resuming flights to the capital of the war-torn northern region of Tigray on Wednesday, the first commercial flights to Tigray in about 18 months. Reuters correspondent Olivia Chan has more.
Kase Hailu and her family are on one of the first flights from Addis Ababa to Tigray's capital Mekelle in about 18 months. A day after a delegation of government officials and heads of public enterprises visited Mekelle to discuss the implementation of last month's peace agreement.
I lived here, separated from my husband and child, whom I love. I came here for my daughter's examination and suddenly got stuck here.
The agreement, which included promises to restore services, ended 2 years of fighting between the Ethiopian federal government and its allies against the Tigrayan forces. The conflict killed thousands and displaced millions.
Rwanda said a fighter jet from the Democratic Republic of Congo violated its airspace Wednesday amid spiraling tensions between the neighbors over rebels advancing in the DRC's volatile east. The DRC has accused Rwanda of backing the M23 rebel group, which has captured swaths of territory from the Congolese army and allied militias in recent months. Kigali has denied the allegations, which are also supported by UN experts, as well as the United States, France, and Belgium. North Korea's leader has presented new plans to bolster the country's military power. AP correspondent Karen Chalmers reports.
The move is an indication that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will continue his provocative run of weapons displays. Kim's statement came as tensions with South Korea rose sharply, with the South accusing the North of flying drones across the border for the first time in 5 years. This statement came in a meeting with top political officials, where Kim set out key goals to fortify what North Korean media are calling the self-reliant defense capability to push forward in 2023. I'm Karen Chamas.
Brazil's Supreme Court on Wednesday banned registered gun owners from carrying firearms in the federal district until after the inauguration of President-elect Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva in reaction to recent episodes of political violence. The move comes as tensions remain high in the South American country after the most fraught election in a generation, in which leftist Lula narrowly defeated far-right incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. Bolsonaro supporters have been camping outside army barracks, urging the military to stage a coup. Find more on our website, voanews.com. I'm Joe Ramsey.
This is VOA News. Via remote, I'm Diane Roberts. Russia has unleashed the biggest wave of strikes in weeks on areas throughout Ukraine. Kyiv residents woke up to the thunderous sound of heavy Russian shelling. Ukraine's military said scores of Russian missiles were fired at Ukrainian energy facilities, but that Ukrainian forces managed to shoot down a large number of them. Russia dispatched explosive drones to selected regions overnight before broadening the barrage with cruise missiles in the morning. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is advocating a 10-point peace plan that calls for Russia to recognize Ukraine's territory and withdraw its troops. The Kremlin reiterated its dismissal of the proposal Wednesday, doubling down on its stance that Ukraine must accept the annexation Russia claimed in September after referendums rejected by Ukraine and most other nations as shams. As many as 11 people have died and another 30 injured in a fire at a Cambodian hotel casino on the border of Thailand, according to police. The blaze at the Grand Diamond City Casino Hotel in Phuket broke out late Wednesday. Local media reported that foreign nationals were inside the casino at the time of the fire. Former Pope Benedict's condition remains grave but stable, the Vatican said on Thursday, adding in a statement that he had rested well during the night and was lucid and aware. They add that Pope Francis renews his request to pray for the 95-year-old former pontiff. For more on these and all of the stories we're covering, please visit us at voanews.com or download our easy-to-use mobile app. Search VOA News. This is VOA News. Benjamin Netanyahu was set to return to office at the helm of the most religious and ultra-nationalist government that Israel has ever seen. AP correspondent Karen Chames reports.
Protesters blew horns and waved pride flags outside the Knesset, denouncing what they said was an anti-LGBTQ and racist government. Inside, Netanyahu walked up to the podium to an eruption of applause. He taunted the opposition. I hear the constant cries of the opposition about the end of the country and democracy. Opposition members, to lose in elections is not the end of democracy. This is the essence of democracy. The opposition heckled him with chants of "weak." Netanyahu's allies are pushing for dramatic changes that could alienate large swaths of the Israeli public. I'm Karen Chamas.
Turkey on Thursday denounced French politicians for attending a Paris protest over the killing of 3 Kurds. Some protesters waved flags of the PKK, labeled a terrorist organization by Turkey, the European Union, and the United States, and posters of its jailed leader. Clashes broke out last week between police and Kurdish protesters angry at the killing of 3 members of their community by a gunman on Friday. A travel ban has been lifted in the U.S. city of Buffalo, New York, days after a massive blizzard hit. AP correspondent Donna Warder reports.
Buffalo Mayor Byron Brown says the driving ban was lifted at 12:01 this morning, and he says City Hall will be open.
Significant progress has been made on main streets, secondaries, and residentials. I've toured many areas across the city over the last few days, and I'm pleased with the progress that has been made.
But the mayor says there's still a travel advisory in place.
I'm asking people to still be cautious, and if you don't need to drive, please don't.
More than 36 deaths have been reported in all of western New York. I'm Donna Warder.
Ethiopian Airlines resumed commercial flights to the Tigray region Wednesday following an 18-month shutdown. The restart of flights come more than a month after the government and Tigrayan rebels signed an agreement to end the war that has ravaged northern Ethiopia for 2 years. 11 people have been sentenced to life in prison after being convicted of an Islamic extremist attack that left 19 people dead and dozens more injured on an Ivory Coast tourist beach nearly 7 years ago. The killings in a resort area by an al-Qaeda-affiliated group were the nation's first extremist attack of its kind and one of the bloodiest in the region. Via remote, I'm Diane Roberts, VOA News. This is VOA News via remote. I'm Diane Roberts. Ukraine said Friday it repelled a nighttime drone attack from Russia a day after Moscow launched a new wave of missile strikes in the run-up to New Year celebrations. Ukraine's Air Force said on Friday morning that Russia attacked Ukraine overnight using Iranian-made kamikaze drones. Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese leader Xi Jinping have vowed to deepen their bilateral cooperation against the backdrop of Moscow's 10-month war in Ukraine. Putin and Xi made no direct mention of the fighting in Ukraine in their opening remarks as they met by video conference on Friday. Flags were lowered at FIFA's headquarters in Zurich on Friday as a symbol of mourning and respect to the passing of Brazilian football legend Pelé, who died on Thursday at the age of 82. FIFA President Gianni Infantino.
We never lose him. We never lost him. He's forever with us. He's forever with everyone who loves football.
Some of Pelé's former teammates on Friday remembered him as the greatest player of all time as they mourned his death and celebrated his legacy. Gerson and Pepe, who played Pelé in World Cup winning Brazil sides, described the only man to win 3 World Cup trophies as a player from another planet, who was also a great guy off the pitch. Pelé, whose full name was Edson Arantes do Nascimento, died on Thursday due to multiple organ failures resulting from the progression of colon cancer, according to Sao Paulo's Albert Einstein Hospital. The Brazilian soccer legend was 82. This is VOA News. U.S. President Joe Biden has issued pardons to 6 people. The AP's Ed Donahue reports.
All 6 served out sentences after convictions on a murder charge and drug and alcohol-related crimes. It means their criminal records have been purged. 80-year-old Beverly Ann Iben Thomas of Columbus, Ohio, was convicted of killing her abusive husband. Her appeal was among the first by someone with battered women's syndrome. 66-year-old Gary Parks Davis of Yuma, Arizona, was 22 when he admitted using a telephone for a cocaine transaction. He served a 6-month sentence on nights and weekends. A few months ago, the president pardoned thousands of people convicted of simple possession of marijuana under federal law. He also pardoned 3 people earlier this year and commuted the sentences of 75 others. Ed Donahue, Washington.
Demonstrators shouted slogans denouncing Iran's supreme leader in the rest of southeast of the country Friday, while a human rights group said at least 100 detained protesters were facing possible death sentences. There have been demonstrations across the country against the clerical leadership since mid-September, after the death and detention of a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman arrested for wearing inappropriate attire under Iran's strict Islamic dress code for women. A passenger bus plunged off a cliff in eastern Bolivia Friday, killing 11 people and injuring 23, police said. No one knows just why yet. Some of those with the more serious injuries were brought to Santa Cruz Hospital. A report from congressional investigators finds more problems with the FDA's approval of a controversial Alzheimer's drug. AP correspondent Jackie Quinn reports.
2 House committees were investigating the Food and Drug Administration's approval of Aduhelm, made by Biogen, and reported the process was rife with irregularities, including an atypical collaboration between the regulators and the manufacturer. The report details an unusually high volume of phone calls, meetings, and emails. It also flagged Biogen documents, which said the company intended to make history with the high price of $56,000 a year for the drug. When the FDA approved Aduhelm in 2021, it overruled its own independent scientific advisors, leading some to resign. The investigators recommend the FDA take steps to restore trust in the approval process, especially with a new Alzheimer's drug being considered in January. Jackie Quinn, Washington.
If you'd like more on these or any of the stories covering, please visit us at voanews.com or download our easy-to-use mobile app. Just search VOA News. Via remote, I'm Diane Roberts, VOA News.